and that's our great chairman of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. And that is all good. And I thank you very much for inviting us. I'm Senator Donzella James, and before we get started, I want to just officially open this Urban Affairs meeting. And the best way to do it is to have roll call. Diego Santana will call the roll.
Hi, I'm the Legislative Assistant Diego Santana. I work for State Senator Donzella James. We have with us Senator David Lucas and Senator Savannah. Senator Alford is joining us via Zoom. Senator Lucas, if you'd like.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming. What's happening in Georgia? Real estate conglomerations are buying property in neighborhoods. Might be in your neighborhood. You get a letter saying we're willing to buy your property. I give them all the time. I say in a rather older neighborhood, but they are nice brick village houses. And a lot of them have been bought. And you see folks move in, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, they are gone. And part of that problem is people are spending 30% or better of their income on rental. And when you have kids, it makes it difficult to take care of your kids and pay the rent or have a household to live in that's decent. And so we are trying to look at not jumping on the landlords, I'm one of them myself, but what is the price you have to pay in a community that's safe? Yet your income is what makes it possible for you to try to live in a decent house. And when the rent going 30% or more of your income, it's very hard to sustain living in that community. And what's happening is the folks who are buying the properties don't live there. They're from out of town or from out of state. And they buy the properties and then they jack up the rent. And basically you are having persons who rent in what I call older neighborhoods, but neighborhoods that have people who've been living there 25 to 30 years. And what's happening is the price that they're buying the properties for. And then they turn around and rent them for $2,500 a month when people can't afford it. They go and try, and in 3 weeks, you find all of the furniture sitting outside on the streets. And so it is a concern, and it's something that we're going to have to address. But we, the people, have to make those decisions and come up with the solutions as to not keep folks from being landlords, but trying to make sure that the rents are affordable within those neighborhoods.
Thank you, Senator Lucas, and thank you, Donald James, and Delegation Savannah. I'm Sheikh Rahman. I represent part of Gwinnett County, and this problem not necessarily Gwinnett County rental problem. Let me tell you something. The last, I think, beginning of this year, there's a study came out of Georgia State University, and it shows that 19,000 single-family home in Metro Atlanta bought by Wall Street Corporation company. This is a single, it's not an apartment, single family housing. When you have that many housing just in the Metro Atlanta area, it's owned by a corporation, not any individual, that's the problem. We build single housing for family, or people getting out of school, colleges, and start a family. So there's multiple issues. It's not necessarily my community, it's getting a problem, getting problems all around the state. So we're going to do whatever it is. If you came in here, thank you for inviting us to Savannah. We hear all the time, we have meetings in the capital in Atlanta. Sometimes it's hard to get away. And it's good to be here and listen from you all to see what you think. And we'll try to do whatever we can. And might not be able to solve everything, but at least we need to do whatever we can to help people get some relief. And that's why we're here. Thank you, appreciate it.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Representative Viola Davis, and I serve Georgia House District 87 in DeKalb County, primarily in Tucson, Pine Lake, and Stone Mountain. I want to commend our chairman and Donzella James because she was nice enough to invite House members to attend this meeting, especially on housing, on rental control, and particularly HOAs and POAs. I'm a person who have been bombarded with complaints on HOAs, POAs, and others, where you have property owners who feel like they have no quiet enjoyment of their property and want some changes in the law. So I want to thank you for inviting us and really pushing for us to work together to make some solutions to these problems that we're going through. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. We have more difficulties with the other senators who are on Zoom line. Either they cannot hear us, or we cannot hear them or see them. But there are others on the line. Sonia Harper, Emmanuel Jones, and two others. So when it's fixed, I might, in the middle of, after we discuss this first issue, have them to come on and introduce themselves quickly. We do have Nathan Corbett, who is our research staff person that's assigned to us. Is he able to speak? He's not able to speak to us right now either, but I can. We have a serious problem in the state of Georgia with the escalating prices of rent. I've been seeing it for quite a while now. And when we did a tour of our universities and talked to the students, we found out it's not just some of the hardworking people that work, but also our students that are having problems paying the rent. It continues to double, triple, and quadruple. Can you believe it? In 1 year, when it's time to renew their lease. And it's time now, they just started going back for another semester. And they had to get rent nowhere close to this. If they in, for example, Georgia Tech and Georgia State and Emory University, as well as Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, and Morris Brown. They're having real problems coming within a 30-minute to 50-minute drive just to school because they have to get rent other places. So they're having serious concerns, and that was the first thing, Mr. Chairman, that they brought to us when we went to tour them and talk to them and let us know what the young people wanted us to do in the legislature. So that's why we're here. But this is not the first hearing. This is our 5th hearing. We've had 4 others already, and all were in the city of Atlanta. And now we've been requested to have our last 3 in other places, and I'm glad that we're here in Savannah. My grandson actually goes to Savannah State. My son, yeah.
And my son, who I say is an old man now, he's a solicitor in Douglas County, and he graduated from Savannah State College too. And they didn't have that many problems as far as rent was concerned, but they had to stay on campus. So we don't know what kind of problems they would have had other than that. But this is not something new. But it's terrible that it's not 10% increase or 20%. We're talking about more than 50% in most cases throughout our major cities, and not just in metropolitan Atlanta. Our chairperson of our Rules Committee, Senator Brass, is going to have one of our meetings that's coming up in September 14th at the state capitol at 1 o'clock, and we'll send out that information when it comes up. But he's very interested. At first, he and many other people that sit in other high positions are not interested in the issue of HOA predatory lenders who are taking people's property or in rent control. But now they're interested because they see that it is happening in their communities, in their districts. And so now we're all coming together, and we can't get anything passed unless we come together. And so I'm very pleased that we have now started coming together. And then I was even more pleased a week ago when President Biden announced major new actions in lowering housing costs by limiting rent increases and building more houses. So it is not just a Georgia issue now. It is an issue that people from all over this country will be looking at. And President Biden already called on Congress to pass legislation giving corporate landlords a choice to either cap rent increases on existing units at 5%, or they could charge whatever they want, but they would risk losing current valuable federal tax breaks. And they do continue to do that. And this is only going to reflect on corporate landlords. You see, we found out when we did research in the metropolitan area that the big corporations were coming in and buying up all of the apartments and then charging even those who were still living there, increasing their rent. And so they can control our markets. And they're doing that all throughout Georgia. Even in Valdosta, we had a lot of complaints and people to come up to the state capitol to one of our hearings. Also, Biden wants to repurpose public land, sustainability, to enable as many as 15,000 additional affordable housing units to be built in Nevada. And then now there's been 9 other states that also wants to be a part of this. Because even though the rent is going up and people are being evicted and leaving because they don't have any other choice, and some of them become homeless or have to go stay with people that they know, no matter what, we still have now this crisis because there's so many other houses and apartments being built right now. And if they are already putting people out of apartments because they cannot pay the new rental costs, then how in the world are we gonna fill all these other houses and apartments and condominiums? So if we want to rehabilitate the distressed housing, condominiums, and HOAs. Not all HOAs are bad, so let me stop and bring that in, because some HOAs are doing a great job. But unfortunately, we have every week in the state, in the city of Atlanta, and in 3 other counties in the metropolitan area, people's houses being sold on the courthouse steps. And many of them said they didn't even know that this existed. So we found out that what happens is once you get up to $2,000 worth of liens, then someone can buy them up and sell your house on the courthouse steps, or buy your house. And we're finding out that most of the people who are buying them are the HOA board members who are working with some of these corporate landlords. Can you imagine people who don't even live in your neighborhoods are now buying these houses or buying the apartments? Well, this is really happening, and it's so unfortunate. So I'm glad that we're all coming together and looking at all the things that we can do. Now, we have introduced several pieces of legislation, and from the House, that's why Ms. Davis, I'm so glad that she's here. She and many of the House members have introduced similar legislation to the ones that we in the Senate have introduced. And we introduced them, and we wanted to put an ombudsman office created that would go under the Department of Community Affairs, because we found out that the people who were losing their homes because of liens on their property from not doing something with the HOA, those people will have to get a lawyer, and the lawyer for the HOA is the one that's getting their dues that they did pay. So they have to go now and find another attorney to come and address the problems. And that is terrible also. So we wanted to make sure that we do like 6 other states and have an ombudsman office. That legislation did move pretty fast, but it got stalled when it got to the House of Representatives. And it never got off the committee. So we want to look at that, as well as making sure that we put some holds on selling your house. For example, if you decide you want to renovate your house and paint your shutters black, but somewhere in the covenant, deep in the covenant that you signed when you first bought the house, and sometimes never looked at it since, might say only white. Well, did you know they can give you $1,000 lien against you, probably, or whatever amount that group wants to do? And then say if you get sick and didn't cut your grass, or you have to have an emergency and go out of town, and your grass gets at least 6 inches high, they can put a lien on your property. Once those 2 liens are on there, I don't care if your house costs $100,000 or $2 million. They can still go and take from just $2,000 worth of liens, come and purchase. So we tried to put a stop on that. And I think that is what we'll be addressing next month with Senator Matt Brass, who is our rules chairperson. No, rules, that's pretty good, right? Because everything has to go through rules. And nobody's gonna wanna get mad with the rules chairman if he presents some legislation. So we wanna make sure that we address that too. I'm gonna stop at this point as we've been joined by one of our other senators. What's his name? Oh, you have, okay. Want to introduce yourself and the area that you represent.
Can you hear me? Oh, yes, you can. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Senator Nikki Merritt. I represent the 9th District. That is in Gwinnett County. It's southeast of Gwinnett County. So it's Lawrenceville, Williamsburg, Grayson, and have a little bit of Snellville. And proudly serve on our Urban Affairs Committee. And as y'all have been discussing, housing is probably one of my top issues. I know in Savannah, you're experiencing you're seeing some problems, but in the metro area, and even in my area, we have not just HOAs running amok, but we also have corporate landlords coming and sweeping up all the affordable houses that we do have. We were able to get, as the chairwoman was saying, our SB 125 out of the Senate, but it got stalled. And I do know many of my constituents are paying attention to that type of bill, basically, which just allow us to release, reverse the bill, and reverse the law, so that our municipalities would have control, and our local governments would be able to set or have some regulations on rent control. So it's very important, and I do have constituents looking at that. So there's so much more we could do. A lot of it, while we say elections are important, a lot of what we would have as ideas, they don't get moved, and they don't get moved because we're outnumbered. So it is important that we do, and that you are paying attention to who you are electing, because that has great impact on our ability to move the type of housing legislation that is responsive to citizens. We look forward to our community partnership. We look forward to voters partnership, and so that we can respond appropriately to what is becoming a huge crisis. I'm worried about my children. And many of you probably have children at home. They can't afford rent. I have a 21 and 23-year-old. They're reaching that age, and I'm concerned about our next 10 years. What does this mean? What is it going to do to our economy? So we have to look more broadly. And now is the time that we kind of take action and do some things at the state to address this issue. So I want to thank our chairwoman for having this meeting, and look forward to the discussion today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We still have other members who wanted to address you, but we still have the technical problems. I think now they're listening to us. They can hear us, but we can't hear them yet. So I know that we have many members of housing, different committees in here, right here. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? So you want to introduce any of them to come up and to be able to address us now, so we can, while we're waiting, we can go ahead and discuss their issue and make sure we put it on our agenda, so that in January it will be addressed in legislation. We want to include it. So anyone who wants to speak, do we have a slide on this?
We do.
Oh. Did you want to introduce anyone before I start the slide?
I've learned from my parents, there's so many people in the audience that I might say to Mr. Irvin or someone, I want to miscall someone's name that I didn't call. So I want to be able to go back home to Savannah somewhere. And so I want to make sure that I follow proper protocol, Madam Chair, to see if we can get the list. And if you would give us some guidance, Mr. Mazo, on, is there a microphone that they would use specifically, so that we're in accordance with being able to give them across the state.
Do you have one? Okay, well, while we're in conclusion about the things that we've been doing with the HOA, predatory HOAs, is that we are asking for more transparency and accountability. We want to make sure that, as I mentioned earlier, they have a way to dispute any complaint that is against them, or anything that calls them to have a lien, especially some of them who are still suffering from the pandemic. And then the equitable treatment of each homeowner, because some HOAs have excessive fees and very unjust fines. So at this time, let us continue to come together and advocate for additional legislative
progress. And that's why we want to hear from you. Legislators on both sides of the aisle are talking about this issue now. And as I said, we had 4 other hearings. And when we had the first hearing, we were going to have it for about 25 homeowners associations and some of the apartments that were paying such high rent. And instead of being there for an hour, we were there for 4 hours, and we only addressed maybe half of the people who wanted to talk to us. That is how important this issue is. So we want to make sure that those who have been, some of them already been displaced by this outrageous rent and by the HOA costs. That's why we combine both issues together. Some people said HOA, which also is condominium association, trailer park associations, etc. And then in rent, those are 2 different things, but they're all in affordable housing. So we have to address them today. At this time, we have, which one's first? We have several people who have signed up, and we'd like for you to come up. If you want to come stand up here with them, or are you going to take the mic?
I'll take it around.
Okay. We want, this is the order, so if they can raise their hand, you'll know. But it's India D with CGAA. Also next, Marler Stan. I had to borrow somebody else's glasses, I'm not sure that they work yet. Go ahead. The first person, India D. You don't want to speak right now? You just thought it was a sign-up sheet?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's good, because everyone who did sign up, please know that if you want information about what's going on, we'll be able to email you. So if you put your email address or a number, or you could be text, we'll keep you informed. It's only a few more months before we start our new session in June. Okay. Okay, I'll tell you what, the thing is, who wants to come and address us? You want to come? Who else? How many people want to come? Can we, maybe, do you mind if we can have a line to maybe start right here? If you don't mind, stand. No? You're going to give it. And please, others, raise your hand. When you see the line getting shorter, please come forward. Thank you. And please give us your name and.
Yes, hi, my name is Katie Jackman. I'm a Savannah local, mom of 2 and a property management consultant and home enthusiast, multifamily enthusiast.
Thank you. And would you like to make a
Yeah, I would. So I understand the frustration with rent increases, but I think we're kind of sometimes not looking at the bigger picture, and maybe we're also kind of trying to navigate what's going on. Savannah was the only U.S. city last quarter to see 4% supply and 4% demand. So we are swiftly outgrowing pretty much the rest of the country with our ports, with SCAD, with our economy. We're the golden child of housing right now. So with the boom, we need more housing. And my worry with rent control is that's going to scare new builders and new investors, and we need people to keep coming in. We need more. You know what I mean? We have this high-end plant going. We've got SCAD growing. So if we have too much rent control and we scare builders and investors away, we're going to lose opportunities to build new housing, which is going to kind of stack onto the problem because then the housing, we already have is going to be limited. I know you guys, a couple of you said you're in Gwinnett County, very familiar with Gwinnett and Fulton, and I understand what's going on there. A lot of our investors here, I've worked directly with them or for them. They're buying stuff that's literally falling apart, you know, $60,000, $200,000 renovations need done on these houses. They're not going in, they're not the ones buying, you know, land and building entire build to rent communities, which I understand that's going on as well. But I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Blackstone and BlackRock.
Yes.
And of the 19,000 homes you spoke of, 11,000 of those were actually bought by Blackstone directly. So I think we need to kind of look at the difference between those predatory investors. Blackstone is, they're coming in there, they're buying everything from everyone, you know? Interest rates are ridiculous right now, so your average American can't afford the interest rates on a home. BlackRock is the only company that had 70 billion in cash. They're buying these houses outright cash. They don't have interest rates. So those are some of the things we're competing with more so than your everyday landlord, your guys like MA and Palms here. They're not BlackRock, they're not Blackstone. And they're having to pay a astronomical amount of property taxes on the stuff we are buying. You know, I go to underwrite a property, it's beautiful, we want to do renovations to it. Once we put the property taxes in there with the rents we have now, sometimes there's no way to make it work. Speaking of SCAD owns 70 buildings in Savannah. 19 of those buildings are student housing, not to even include their venue. Their tuition is $40,000 a year per student. Their housing is approximately $1,000 a month per student. The 19 buildings that are student housing house 7,076 students, bringing in an estimated $84,912,000 in rent income alone for SCAD. So while I love SCAD and I know they've done a ton for our economy, they've completely changed Savannah's economy and aesthetic. They've been getting away with not paying property taxes for years. They pay property taxes on 4 of those buildings. So they're making almost 85 million in profit, and they're not taking their share of property taxes. And I really wonder if SCAD paid more in property taxes, if the rest of us would have a little bit of an easement on our property taxes to make the rents more affordable. Your average landlord makes 7 cents on the dollar, your smaller guy. Speaking of Gwinnett and Fulton County, big fan of Gwinnett County. I did a lot of property management there. You know, while we kind of sometimes want to point fingers at the landlords during the moratoriums, you know, I was watching, especially in Fulton County, landlords have to let somebody, you know, they're paying a mortgage on a property that they're not receiving rent on for a year, even after the lift. I know in 2023, it was taking landlords in Fulton County up to a year to be able to get a set out on an eviction. So that's a year of rent they can't even collect anything on. Speaking of property taxes went up 7.18% in Chatham County this past year. Those directly fund our public schools. So that's one of my worries, is that we also need to make sure if, you know, we put a cap on rents, what's that going to do to our property values? What's that going to do to our schools? 19.8% of our students, grade 3 to 8, are proficient in reading compared to 36% of the national average. So I think we need to do more for our local schools, and I really worry that rent control would devalue our real estate and affect those property taxes in some already struggling schools and areas. I think that's pretty much it. Is the, you know, BlackRock's the only one really not worried about interest rates right now. They're not worried about property taxes, and the rest of us smaller guys are.
Before you leave, Ms. Jackman, you want to give us your list? Because we will make sure that we include it. But let me address some of your issues at this time. Property taxes are not in the jurisdiction of the legislature, of the General Assembly. That's your cities and counties. So, yes, we need to make sure that we address that, but we have no jurisdiction over what would happen. We're addressing the laws and the policies that have made it easy for these things to happen. And most of us, as you heard Senator Lucas say, he's a landlord. He owns many properties. I can say the same thing. With my late husband and I own about 28 properties in Georgia, in Atlanta here. And when he became ill, liquidated everything. He's in heaven now, so, you know, I'm not in that anymore. And this, what the president is proposing, as well as our legislation, is not the kind of people that you were addressing who are investors, like the mom and pop investors or just small companies, but it's the corporate investors. We are finding out that not only with housing, but with businesses that are leasing the property. And even our agriculture chairperson has been fighting the fact that our farmlands that have closed down are now being bought by big corporations. And they're from many of them are from other countries, other continents, not even here, nowhere close by. And so they're beginning to control our area. And so we need to make sure that we have a handle on that, and also not those who may have had a 10% increase. We're talking about people who have had 50%, 75% increase, or even more. And they don't even, the kids were saying they've been paying up to $1,500 in the past. And now that the increase is coming and being welcomed by all the landlords, now they can't get anything for less than $3,500 a month. And they didn't even put paint on the wall or do anything to improve the apartment that they have been renting. So these are the kind of folks that we want to make sure don't gouge the property, the persons who are renting from them. And so I've never gouged any of the folks who rented from us. We have a waiting list. My husband and I were teenagers when we got married. We started buying 1 or 2 houses a year until we had a lot of property. Also being an air traffic controller and going to school and getting a degree, we were still interested in the housing market, mostly to make sure that people had a decent place to live. So we're not talking about we're talking about the people who are gouging. And that is exactly what they're doing to us at this time. Now, our chairperson is here in the city of Savannah. And Mr. Chairman, you want to address any more issues before we go to the next speaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Ms. Jackson's point, I agree with you when you were talking about all of the taxation around representation from SCAG. I do, that's a local issue that I hope the city of Savannah steps up on. I'll boldly say that. But also, I'm also concerned, you hit a lot of very valid points, but also look at the residents of Jackson County, outside of all the other people, outside of all the developers, outside of all the housing. We got to look at those citizens that have been here that are trying to have a quality of life. So I agree with you on all of the facts that you brought up, from the interest rates, the housing, but I'm very concerned about the common layman and laywoman. What are they going to do? Because I hear everybody talking about the developers. I hear everybody talking about the landlords. I hear everybody talking about housing. But what are common people going to do? I want to also say that I agree with you in reference to taxation without representation from the county. You know, I don't want to pay fire tax like that. So I'm going to challenge boldly and openly our local government also to step up and work with us in the state to see what we can do for the better and the common good of everyone. It's going to take everyone. It's not just going to take one parable of the picture. It's going to take everything. We have, you know, Hyundai and all of the development. We're number 2 in feature film. I know from 16.5 million tourists that come in to all of Hyundai and all the above. But I'll go back again. What about the common citizens that are here, that are just trying to have a quality of life?
We really appreciate you coming and speaking. Before you leave, is there any other legislator that has a comment or question? Okay. Yes.
One more. Thank you.
My question to you, you were talking about the investors on one hand, and you were comparing them to the corporations. When we write legislation, you want there to be a clear distinction between the two when it comes to writing that legislation, and that you don't want to be placed in the same category as an investor.
That's fair. I think there's a much different, when you look at the big picture and you look at Blackstone and BlackRock, they're completely different from, your local guy that's buying a house that's like literally, falling apart and turning it around and renting it at a normal rent, maybe slightly higher, but that's because they have to, there's a lot of homes that need repair around here, and there's a lot of areas that need value brought to them. And some of our local smaller LLC guys, they're not being predatory, and I'd like to see them in a different light than Blackstone and BlackRock that's going and buying, agriculture land and slapping 70 built rents. I see them in different pictures.
Is there any particular area in which you want at constant, you want us to be clear to make there be a separation between the two? Like with the cap and so forth.
Yeah, I think that's up for discussion. I don't think we've gotten that far. I haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest. I can, I think most of us can see the difference. We all understand the difference. But I think that, again, I just worry about, while I understand the concern for rents, I worry that rent caps are going to, or rent control is going to affect those people that are bringing value back to our community.
I guess I'm looking at the point of, if you want there to be a separation, how would there be a separation that would balance or be fair to all the people involved? So
I think we have to consider the fact, if you're paying interest rates and you're paying property taxes, you need to be, that's different. Blackstone is buying everything cash, SCAD, they're not having to pay property taxes on their stuff. So they're different to me, their struggles are different. And so we have people not facing the same struggles as a landlord that some do, that is a landlord that faces those struggles. It only makes sense to have to raise your rents.
Thank you very much. It's a person that wants to make a comment about your issue. That's online. Austin Ross.
This is from Austin Rojas, and he says, Savannah resident is a Hispanic resident who's priced out of the housing market here. A few concerns. One, consider that working people who rent cannot attend a 1 o'clock p.m. meeting. Two, studies show that rent control does not affect housing supply and can actually increase it. There's demand in Savannah. Builders will seek to meet it regardless of rent control. Three, the legislature should repeal preemption laws as they are anti-democratic. Four, the legislature should pursue policies that maximize community control over their housing mix, supply, and prices. Funding community land trusts, empowering and fostering tenant unions would be a human right, and start from there. Both would be great options. Five, yes, we need more housing, but we do not need more privately owned housing treated as revenue assets and investments. Six, housing policy should reflect the fact that housing is, and I beg this committee not to take seriously the concerns voiced by someone with a financial stake in the status quo, a status quo that created and perpetuates the housing crisis.
We want to listen to on both sides, everyone. And that's why we are opening up to you and appreciating your comments. Did you want to say anything on the last thing? Because we have about 5 more people who want to speak.
I'm good, I'll let you.
7? Oh, excuse me. Senator, I can't see you way down there.
Just a comment on the whole rent control. So what the bill actually do, and what we're asking is we're trying to make it so that our localities, our municipals, and our local governments have control over regulating rent. It's not going to stay like, and I would think local governments have a better understanding of the communities and what's needed. So the concern about, and we're not talking about mom and pop renting, we're talking about, you know, these big multifamilies sometimes that come in, or these corporate landlords that we have come in. This is who we're talking about. And the other thing is there's no transparency in how they're calculating rent. That's something we could address legislatively that I haven't yet. See, I keep asking, what's the calculation? I know it has to do with market value, but I do also know there is a percentage that the owner has control over. We don't have transparency there. So what the rent control bill does, it just allows our local governments to kind of regulate that, to be able to look at the communities, to be able to maybe limit some rates that, you know, landlords are placing on certain properties. And again, I think our localities have a better understanding of that than like any corporation would.
Thank you very much, Senator. Also, I'll let you talk and then I'll come back and answer a couple of other things. Because I think it's a misunderstanding about rent control. Most people don't understand that, we in the state of Georgia, the major piece of legislation we had was to lift, the prohibition against, rent control. Right now in the state of Georgia, it's not legal to have rent control at all. But in other states it is, but it's different ways. You know, we don't want to end up like New York or maybe even California that has a mandatory rent control in certain areas. Because we don't know what the cities and the counties need in order to continue to prosper and do a good job. So with those, we want to lift the ban that we have here, so we can give local control to our counties and our cities. And those people who you vote for, who you can touch. You know, you might vote for some of us and some of the congresspersons, but you may not ever even see them in person. But you can go all the time and see the people in your community. And so that's who we think should have the voice on what happens, because Atlanta's rent control might be entirely different from Wyandotte, Georgia, or one of the big counties area, you know, so it might not be the same. So they could have 5% cap or no cap at all, or saying that maybe you cannot raise the rent more than 50%, which is terrible, but they could do that if they wanted to. Or they could say, well, we want to ban rent control in our county or our city. So that's what this legislation, one of the pieces of legislation that we've introduced wants to do, lift it and let all of you, everyone, have rent control, or not have it, according to what the mayors and the city council persons, county commissioners want to do for that. Okay, and thank you for being patient and give us your name and any other information. I think you may have signed it, but we have 5 lists and we have to find your name when we see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tristan Porter. I'm part of the Government Affairs team for the Georgia Apartment Association. We are the
Thank you.
We are the voice for the multifamily housing industry in Georgia. Members of our association provide homes for millions of Georgians. We directly employ over 5,000 Georgians in our properties. Our businesses that support the properties and support our communities employ another 125,000 Georgians. Our members contribute more than, we're currently sitting at over $1.45 billion in taxes and other revenue. And every 100 new apartments that gets created generates over $384,000 in tax revenue and 47 local jobs. Today I'm here because while the idea of rent control may seem as an attractive option for dealing with the housing crisis that our nation and community faces, We tend to find that it actually causes more issues for housing providers and renters. We talked recently about where rent control has taken place, and a few years ago, in 2021, St. Paul enacted rent control, and its neighboring city, Twin City, Minneapolis, did not. Immediately in the year following rent control being enacted, over 80%, there was an 80% decrease in building permits provided, as it did end up scaring off other developers. Stuff like this creates less supply, lowers quality as when rent control is put in place. Owners, developers have less incentive to invest heavily in properties. And it's ends up creating more problems. I've provided data in these folders here that show a breakdown of, on the left side, you'll see a breakdown of where every dollar in rent in Georgia goes to. Everything from mortgage, insurance, repairs. One thing I want to point out is that in Georgia, I believe the number we have is 6 cents of every dollar goes to landlord's actual profit. Just a number that I don't feel like many people have access to publicly, so we just want to come down there. But
Do you have any more of these? Because there's some people who want them to send audience.
we have, I think Diego just a couple looked over.
If you want materials that you heard today and you see that have been given to us, give me your name and where to reach you, and I'll send it to you.
I'd be happy to provide additional copies.
Please do. Okay, well, let me, are you finished? No, go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
It was just that some of the solutions we've seen have been public-private partnerships, often taking the form of a developer sets aside a certain percentage of units to be affordable housing based on the way by they get a tax abatement. That has been a successful model I've seen in Georgia. And then just generally finding ways to lower the overhead costs. A large problem we're seeing in Georgia right now is insurance. For battery insurance in Georgia over the last 4 or 5 years, it's gone up by a multitude of 4 to 5 times. And in many locations, you cannot get this sort of insurance, which both scares off development and for it to do already have it drives up the costs. And so I'm sure we're all familiar that reform is a large push coming for this coming session, and that premises liability, especially for the housing industry, is a vastly needed tool. But I'd love to get any questions.
Okay, are there any questions? Yes.
When you plan to do you ever go to the city to find out whether or not they have community development funds? Because that's part of the house. For instance, if you're doing development, you have to run sewer line. You have to do all those kind of things. The Department of Community Development can help you run those lines to reduce the cost that you are paying in order to develop a particular subdivision, which means that if they're able to do that, then you're able to cut your price based on what your expenses are in that project.
Thanks, Senator. Yes, that is actually one of the more successful relationships. We maintain these relationships with local electeds and these offices for community funds. And that has been a successful way of making sure that overhead costs come down as much as possible. And that has resulted in, over the last year, the Atlanta area there has seen an overall decrease in about 6% of rent. And where you may not even see it as far as an official number. If you drive around and see a community that says 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks free rent, that is another way of it taking place. It's just, if you're signing a new lease, you average those 6 weeks of free rent out as a decrease overall rent. But yes, to answer your question, those are relationships and avenues that our members actively pursue. There's only so much to go around.
Especially if you go into older neighborhoods. They got terracotta pipe. Folks thought they would last forever, but they won't. A tree will go through it. And if you got a 2-story house, and you got a basement, your sewer line, it's blocked. You go downstairs and your sewer line is blocked. Now you got to spend $6,000-7,000 to run a new sewer line to the street. And so through community development, they can help mediate those calls, especially when you go into all the neighborhoods where the pipes are old.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Yes. Go ahead.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you. Have you heard of people who are searching for apartments? And there's businesses, property LLCs, that will go in, rent the apartment, and then turn around and rent out the rental unit as a business. So they say you rent the apartment for $1,200. That business would add another $300 and then rent to a second person. It's almost like they turned a second rental, co-rental business of your huge corporation rental units. Is that something you've heard of going on, or is that something that you all are cracking down on?
Currently, we have, our association, Georgia Park Association, has a lease that our members more often than not use, and that practice is not allowed as per our lease. So that is something that our members are not encountering as it is prohibited.
Okay.
Georgia is the number one state to do business, and we're doing business. For 11 years, we've earned that distinction. And so all of our legislation is not trying to harm the business person or the landlord, even the corporation. We just want everything fair and equitable. And that's basically what we've been trying to do. Now, I'm not seeing rent go down in Atlanta, and I've been representing Hayfield, East Point, College Park, New City, Fairview, Down Meadow, the city of South Wilson, Atlanta, Southwest, all of Douglas County, and some of Cobb, and some of Fayette County. There's no decrease that I know of. So, you know, you're the apartment association, I know y'all do a good job. I would love to have any solid stats on this and know what areas that decreases in. And I want to know how can they decrease rent when everybody else is tripling or almost tripling. So I would like to know.
We have provided access to. We're also part of the National Apartment Association. So if we can provide information, if you hear something in another state, in the community somewhere, something someone's trying, we would love to provide you with any kind of requests regarding those other locations.
And I would like to also say that from my research, many of the states that have rent control, there are different forms. It's not one way. So most of them, many of them are really helping their whole state. And they have, just like Atlanta and some of the other metropolitan areas, they have so many new houses. Everywhere you look, they're building more condominiums and houses all over, and they're empty. And my whole problem is if people are not able to afford the increase in rent or increase in property taxes or whatever now, what's going to happen to those houses? And we'll have more blighted areas. You know, I think that the last speaker talked about some of the areas that were blighted in the area, and people, some of the investors get that property and improve it. What she didn't also include is that, yes, they do that. But then they raise the taxes, raise the amount of money anyone who wants to buy it or rent it. It's very outrageous, most of it. And so those things are making the other people who are in that neighborhood who've been living there, their property value has to go up, and they often cannot afford to pay the increase. So they end up either getting their property foreclosed on or can't pay their taxes if they already own the houses. So it's a problem that's gonna increase unless we do something now. So if we're not gonna have a cap on it, for everyone who does not want it, I want you to tell us what would work, because we're for the people, and that's what we wanna do, to make sure that all the people have an opportunity to realize the American dream, or to just get an apartment that's decent and accessible to bus lines or highways if they're driving and have to go long distances.
Yes, Senator. I'm afraid it may not feel as the most satisfying answer, but our general findings is just finding other ways to increase supply. There's public-private partnerships we talked about, set aside a certain amount to be based on your areas of line, your average median income. We're seeing right now the end of a wave of new products coming on the markets. And it's been happening for this year. We've seen a lot of projects finish, especially in the Atlanta area, with the growth we've been seeing. The Atlanta Regional Commission foresees substantial continued growth for a number of years ahead of us. The concern we have is that due to largely what we're seeing, especially with our insurance costs, is that this new construction, new development, more supply for people with attainable housing is starting to dry up. The mayor's office of Atlanta is also seeing less applications for these public-private partnerships. It's just becoming very difficult for developers in the industry to create more housing. So I would specifically like to ask to support some form of court reform, especially on premises liability and how that affects our insurance rates and the drastic increase in overhead costs that's causing our industry.
Our insurance person is Senator Lucas, who represents the Macon area. You want to address what you said?
Well, from personal experience, you go to the bank, get a loan, to say, redo it over there, houses, the roof leaks. But you go in the old neighborhood and they have some, what I call good stuff that need to take a bulldozer and bulldoze down. But what you end up is, I got a bank loan and to do 2 apartments. When I got to the apartments to run the sewer line ran in between the 2 apartments. They were connected right there. But when I got ready to run the sewer line and I took back on, I didn't find part of the sewer line until I got down to the street to attach on. So that was money that I had not anticipated in that loan package. But you basically get 80%, you put 20, you get 80. And I did not know that community development had money that would help me alleviate that cost on that sewer line. That's what the money is for. It's to help folks in neighborhoods and to help the housing stuff. And that's the reason I say you need to go to them before you start doing them and find out what the community development is doing as far as housing in that community. Because they got to.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes,
First of all, thank you for what you do to represent so many people in reference to housing across state of Georgia. One of the things I haven't heard about is the criteria. We're talking about rent control, we're talking about HOAs. Now the criteria is changing. So the average person that might want to get into an apartment or a house, they can't even meet the criteria. And so we need to look at all of it above. Because what I'm hearing now, and I know we've got a lot of violent people here today, I keep hearing about representation of the profit versus the people. And so what do we do for those persons that are trying? And I'm gonna talk about, I represent unarmed airfield. We got struggling folk that are in the military that are trying to come in as couples and families that are struggling. And they're just trying to get basic housing outside of the military. But some of them don't qualify. So is there anything else being done in reference to the criteria and qualifications?
As far as criteria goes, as far as a unified effort on information on that, largely when it comes to creating, to serving needs of housing in a local area for individual cases, it really does boil down to whatever public-private partnerships we establish with local governments, whether that be the county or city, and just what gets worked out at that level. Sorry, I don't have something more unified to say.
If I were in the General Assembly, I would say, could the gentleman further yield? What we are even able to do, and I'm going back to the partnerships with you, because I know that everybody said in the audience, we're not against you, but we got to push the button on what you just said. I'm going to follow with our county officials and our city officials in the different municipalities, see what we can do. So if there's partnerships and being creative, we've got to do something. As Senator Lucas said, that there are funds available in different parallels of government. And just as well as I've got creative with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs to get 262 people in houses, we've got to get creative. I'm very concerned today because I keep hearing about the profit. I just keep hearing about it, but I don't hear anything about the people. I'm very concerned because if we've got developers developing more houses or people having more apartments, 5,000 plus jobs in the areas of Hyundai, there are people coming in. How are we going to make it more affordable and criteria? So whatever we need to do following this meeting, I extend my hand to you and say, let's get together. And I'm sure we're dealing with that, even in rural areas where my mother was born in Pembroke, Georgia, in Liberty County. You know, the prices are going up for land and all the above because of the virtue of Hyundai. So can you imagine families trying to come into those areas and can't get in because they can't afford it? So anything we can do to work together, we're here.
Absolutely, thank you. And for those of you from the Atlanta area, you're familiar with the Melody Project in Atlanta that was with the mayor's housing team. The Melody Project was completed. That was a member of ours. Our members were very proud of their business prowess, but many of them also very civic-minded. I've been in meetings with them, would like to build relationships. And again, it's going to be very much dependent on the individual situation, the relationship, and the needs of the community, and what the communities can provide. We've heard conversations from sometimes 80% AMI, but I've heard developer members talk about what can we do, what can we work out as find solutions for as well as the 40% AMI. So there is a desire in the private sector to work together to create these kinds of solutions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Do you want, or you gave us already a package of what you just talked about. If there's any other questions that you have or comments, please send it to this committee and give us the
You can send it directly to Senator James at donzella.james@senate.ga.gov and CC myself or legislative assistant at diego.santana@senate.ga.gov. You can also go to the Georgia General Assembly website, click on Senator James's page and contact us through that as well.
Thank you. Yes, we have a friend of ours here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you again. I'm Reverend Allen Mayor. Everybody know I'm fighting the least, the lost, and the left out. And we're talking about the least, the lost, and the left out. We're talking about people that are marginalized, that live in these areas, and we do want to capitalize. I'm working with a family right now. The family is an elderly lady that has a special needs son. She was 1 month behind. 1 month behind. And the landlord decided that they wanted her out of the house. And they came up with this outrageous number, $4,075 for that. That was to push her out of the house. A house that she's been living, that she could afford. A house that she has, as I said again, a special needs son. So now what do we do as a community? So we got together in Rick Park, okay? And we did not raise $4,000, but we raised $2,000. So there's more of this that's going on in our community. So we're not gonna be able to go in and stand in the gap all the time. So what do we do when this happens again in our community? So we need more work development housing. We need more affordable housing. Yes, we do. We need people that really care about our people. See, all of these statistics, that's good to hear. But if you don't go and talk to the common man, you don't know what we need. And I will be quiet if I have to go.
No. Well, any questions? And please, you come to speak with us. Thank you very much. If you were in Atlanta, they'd probably cheering after you before you could sit down. Thank you very much.
Yes, the name is Jerome Irwin, and I work very closely with Alice. But, you know, I'm going to employ you to try to put a cap on rent.
Okay.
You can go and ride down through the projects of Savannah, Georgia. People can't even afford the project houses. You got more project houses boarded up than a little bit. We got people sleeping underneath the bridge. Can't afford to pay the rent. We have people that are pushed out of their homes, that stayed in their homes for like 30 years of probably paying rent. And were satisfied with the rent that they were paying. We got greed taking effect because of all the so-called progress that Georgia is making. When the progress it's not even progress anymore because they sell the labor in Georgia cheap. We have to look at and stand back and look and see what it's going to take. We have even officials in different cities, not only in Savannah, but different cities, getting rich because they can see, they know where the property is going out for taxes. They know how to get it cheap. And they acquire it, and when they acquire it, then they go back and then they become slumlords.
Yes.
So I implore you to, whatever you do, whatever you can do, to please try to put a cap on the rent so that people can afford to live there. Because I'll give you a good example. When my family bought my house, it was like $2,700. They were paying $27.50 a month just to buy a house. That wasn't renting, that was buying a house. Now the house is worth over $150,000. But when you look at it, and if you had to rent that house, how much would you rent that house for? If you put a person in a rental home and they stay there for 5 to 6 years, 7, 8 years, and you have a problem on it, you're gaining at a moderate rate. When you got an expensive rent, like who in the world now can pay $1,600, $1,700 a month? But that's what the rental rate is going for. And people are moving in and moving out. You have to remodel the house before somebody else moves in. So that's a standard expense. So please, if you can, try to put a cap on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody have any comments or questions? No, thank you so much for giving us your testimony here about what's going on in your area. And tell me your area one more time.
What's the area?
What's your area?
Savannah.
In Savannah.
Savannah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Come.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll come.
Everyone. Other homes that are being purchased, and many of them by corporations, they have renovated them much. Those people are the ones who allude to them, and then, or if they leave them to a family member, the family member can't afford to go in there and pay up the late taxes and go on. So it's a real issue that we don't even those issues that come into play with rent control. What we should have is rent control. And definitely is a predatory. Uh, during the pandemic, there were seniors who had already purchased their home, and they were just paying HOA fees. I'd say a good 50% of those people don't have those homes anymore. They were taken from them. Now, for different reasons, and maybe they should have had a time limit like what you were talking about to pay it, or some kind of way to go and say, can I pay $100 a month until I get, paid off or catch up. But when they did, some of the, homeowners associations or real people allowed them to do it, but they kept adding on more and more and more. So they couldn't play catch up and keep up. So that's another reason why we're here today, so we can hear from all of you and try to find a solution to all these problems. So thank you. Any other questions, anyone, comments? Thank you. Who else do we have together? Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
That's one big issue that, especially in West Savannah, is we're being preyed upon very viciously by these corporations and these investors, local or out of town. They have been coming and buying up property in West Savannah like it's bubbly, and then turning around and selling it for $300,000 or renting it for close to $2,000, $2,500. This is a house right now, Carver Village, where he's from, that's renting for $2,500, and it's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath in Carver Village.
My goodness.
And then they okay, you want to help the kids. Well, a lot of kids are experiencing homelessness because of this. They're only able to live with a family member or this, that, and third. I have somebody right now that's experiencing it. They have to leave Savannah because they can't afford to live here. And we have to watch kids while they're out looking for a place to live outside of Savannah. So now a family's gonna be gone that was once thriving, trying to make it happen in Savannah. They're gonna have to leave, and we're gonna wind up losing all of our revenue if we don't do something soon. We need to, as well as the cap on rents, find ways to make land available for local people that are trying to do something about affordable housing.
You know, thank you. You know, that is, I'm gonna let our chairman, here from Savannah speak on that, but I do want you to know that we're cognizant about what is going on. And that is one of the things that we've been looking at too, in areas, the different areas of town and the different needs. That's why I keep bringing it up, is different kinds of rent control. And also, that's why I think that it should be in the hands of the local community, because the mayors know what their tax base should be and how much they need to, you know, how much it could be raised or whatever. You want to say something?
Can y'all at least have a bare minimum that has to be done? Because I don't know about every other city, but Savannah is, I wouldn't trust our government with it, because they are, and the reason we're in the position we're in now, because they've been bought.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, that's just, and.
But not all of them.
No, not all, but the local government. Unfortunately, most of them have been done. And by the people that are buying up most of Savannah.
Well, I understand. Well, we unbought and unbossed. We just committed to you, the people, and our chairman can tell you better than I can what needs to happen.
Two things. Can we just get you to identify your name just for record and which area of Savannah?
Both Gordon, West Savannah.
If you're speaking to the microphone.
Both Gordon, West Savannah.
All right.
Thank you.
So let me give you some synonyms that I'm not ashamed of. As I get older, I start speaking when I say, what I feel. They're called housing vultures. And what they're doing is another word called pimpidocious. They have come into the community and become housing vultures to pimp the people with no quality of life. I'm just saying it like cornbread today, if y'all excuse me. Because the quality of life in West Savannah, Carver Village, Hudson Hill, those are communities that we thrive and grow in. As we just had the Vice President of the United States come into the MR Arena the other day, into a quality for life community such as West Savannah and Carver Village. We cannot forget about the people in the community. I want to send a message to all of the village community. I hear you. I'm a proponent of growth. I'm a proponent. But what I'm not hearing is, what about the people in those areas? My mother had 10 children, I was one of 10, I was number 9, the D baby. And on the weekends, I had to stay over on Port Street in Carver Village, and then we went to Auntie's house on Augusta Avenue. So I know, being a person that grew up in those areas. But then I get on with local government, and I'll send a message. Once again, as I get older, I say what I say, and feel very confident. Local government has to step up and stop being conscious of the people, and stop letting those areas being sold by housing vultures and not care about the quality of life. West Savannah, right now, we have a meeting next week with the city, and those houses are being sold like water. They have a housing bank, it's being sold like water. They're coming to you to buy your properties. I'm just letting you know, I'm sending a message to all of the people from Roosevelt Hill, every crack and crevice that you can, every crack and place that you find is a small lot, they're buying them up. Anywhere they can build a home. Look at Henry Street, Anderson. Everything is being bought up. So, twofold, in the private sector, we also got to get the people who start buying or buying properties and developing those properties. Because if you don't, somebody will. So it's an opportunity for people to get together to formulate some housing or developing companies to get those spaces, or for people to hold on to their properties. We must preserve the right quality of life. I'm gonna keep saying it over and over, so we can sound the alarm. It is not fair that local government must step up and stop allowing those people free to come and buy everything. The mission is now, let's move them, and I'm not talking about black folk, I'm talking about white folk, I'm talking about working folk, let's move them out of the city. And let's just move them out, unincorporated on the above. So much, Madam Chair, that now they're building housing at the overlook mall. Hear me now. So they're trying to find everything they can to build. And so to everyone, we hear you loud and clear. And once again, we're gonna follow up and extend the hand with our local government. But we have to do more.
Thank you.
Well, hit on a lot of what I got up here to say. So far as local government could have been ahead of this a long time ago. But I noticed that every time something came up to be built, it was from an out-of-town place. When monies came in from the federal government for CLTs and local development, it went to somebody in New York, CLT in New York. But we have those same nonprofits here, but when monies come in, it needs to come in with a specific, tell me specific, who you contact. What do you do when you contact that person? But they say the money's coming in, and if you want to apply, but you have to work through the minutia to see who, you contact again. We have, when I mentioned CLT, because that's what I remember, CLT. And Community Land Trust is here to work with the community, find out what they want, what they need, but while also providing affordable, and not just 15 years, because that's the thing in Savannah. Contractors come in, they say, we're gonna provide a certain portion of this as affordable for 15, 20 years. But you still got the same problem in 15 or 20 years. CLT provide long-term, permanent, affordable housing. But it is hard for groups like ours to get any traction here, because I don't think the local government want that. I think the main, he wanted solutions, and this, I think solution to this, like I said, is for the local government to identify nonprofits or otherwise in the city who are working towards affordable housing and to, in what neighborhoods, and also to recognize what the community wants. I know we have, some people say density. Density is that we are seeing a lot of density, but that is not always the solution. And so far as the rent, I'm with everybody. I mean, I've been around for a minute, and I've seen rent controls, and it never stopped Savannah from growing. Not one bit, but it did help the people who needed it. So I'm just asking that the that city recognize that we have torn down a whole lot of affordable housing. To rebuild it, but not quite so affordable. We torn down on Abercrombie. It housed indigent patients and special needs people. Those people were put out of that place. I don't know what happened to most of them. And who owned that building? Oh, SCAD had that building. But now the people who, they were affordable. They were already affordable housing in West Savannah. Clover, Clearview was torn down. It was affordable housing. Now, when it's replaced, I don't think about one person who lived in Clearview will be able to live there again. And now, historic Yamaha Village, Savannah don't usually tear down historic places, but it's our historic place. And they say they're gonna tear it down, build it back up, but only a portion, when they build it back up, will be affordable. And what is affordable for the people who are living there now, will they be able to afford it? And another thing, Savannah keeps saying our median income is $9,000. I don't know, nobody, I mean, in these neighborhoods, they make $90,000 a year, but that's what we say, it's $90,000. So we need to get real when we are doing our calculations about housing. When I get up, my folks sit down, so that's what I can come for right now. Anybody, any comments?
Right.
Questions?
Yes. What? You want to say something short? Okay.
How y'all doing today?
Hello?
My name is Serena.
Please use.
My name is Serena, and I'm the power ecosystem. I also am a mortgage broker
Can you talk with you?
an independent mortgage broker. So all of these problems that we discussed today, issues are concerned for me, just because I started with, as an independent mortgage broker, right when the interest rates went up. However, I was a loan for 2012, and I wrote the loan, right? So that was when interest rates went 2.4, 2.8. So we're just like slamming that for refinance. So for me, it's very disheartening to be on this side, and just denying people at astronomical rates. Like, you just can't afford a home. You're making $80,000 a couple in your DTI, so you know, this last, the EDIO loan that's still on their personal credit, that was something else coming back about their business, so now they're priced out for their debt. Also, it also has to like the income limits, like some people, if you're working in tourist environments, your wages is to cut. You feel like it work or your wages are up. I know our ILA side, I know our maintenance right now as well. So families are really being burdened by the income. They're also being priced out at the grocery store. They're being priced out at the gas station. So all of these different budgets that come together to make how you run your household, how you keep your family, are up 20%, 30%. So now come and try to get a home loan and try to do that equity of instead of just renting, and we're talking about for renting products. But it prices it out, so now you never have homeowners. That takes away your quality of life, right? It said that your incomes, your credit scores, all of that impacts your life expectancy. It impacts what type of healthcare you'll receive. It impacts where you'll send your kids to school. So it also, like I said, their life expectancy, people who have higher credit scores, they live longer. Everything that's been mentioned and talked about that I want to say, I can talk about, I want to say the same thing over. But there is a multifaceted approach that we can take, and it's going to take here in Savannah on the courts is a different type of environment, right? It's highly contaminated. There's been corporate legal dumping, so it's not just something that you'll be able to look up on the EPA and using one of those environmental tools. Like I know right in Ogeechee, they just shut down Savannah Auto Port. I used to see trucks come out of there. It was no even access road back there. So what are they doing back there? Probably dumping, right? Illegal dumping. I'm sure that this land needs to be assessed before anything is built there. Because then what happens is they come in and they do new construction, they pull up layers of the soil, they don't know what's under there, it's contaminated, now you have these new pipes, now people are getting sick, you have kids dying, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the kids that's been impacted by the asthma, right? We don't talk about the impacts of the environment, which is contaminating here because we have the ports. And all of that needs to be addressed before we just come in and start building up. Because now you have people, our seniors, they're not able to age in place. That takes away from the life expectancy. Then you are talking about a group of people who have some type of ownership to the dwellings where they live at, whether it's on paper or not, right? Because everything has been taken from these people, right? And I include myself with this class of people that are talking about. So now you're coming in and taking it, you know they don't own it, right? Although they control the Yamacraw area, it was taken from us once before, right? Now they're gonna come in, price this out. That also takes away from people who work downtown, who use the transportation system, the transportation down there. Now you're gonna move them out to Rankin. There's no bus line here, you know, so now they're gonna be out of work. So it's more of a burden. So I want to ask you all if we were, because there's developers here, there's also solar and weatherization companies here that can help with the utility burdens. Because sometimes often when these developers do come in, they grow those cookie cutter homes. Now people are priced out, can't pay their rent, they can't pay their utilities, their electric bills, the water. It's such an impact on the people when we don't use all of these sectors and have them work together. It almost seems as if these departments are working in silos. And it's an ecosystem that has to be developed to have a higher quality standard of life. And it starts at a home, right? It starts an adequate place to live, a safe environment to live. I know just in June, there were 17 shootings, students. So we have that here. We have an ecosystem here, right in Savannah, of people that value disparities. There's nonprofits here, right? But then you have certain organizations that are giving over $500,000 to impact 12 or 13 people. That is ridiculous. I've sat in on classes, I didn't should apply, right? I'm a mortgage broker. They won't look at my company as being a disadvantaged business, but I've helped other nonprofits, other for-profit businesses gain access to these funds, and they're getting little money, 10,000, 20,000. That's no impact. The impact is in the funding. So I'm just here, maybe if I can get everyone's cards, send you all some information to where we can put this together. Maybe you all support the developers that's here, that's on the ground, that knows what needs to be done. As you said, there's funding out there, the money's here. DOT has funding to level off an access road, and then on the other side, we have EPA come in and place a pond there, another pond on the opposite side, so where the flooding won't come in. That's what I know we just had storm there. and half our houses were underwater. So that has to be addressed, right?
Yes. You wanted to know if we could all come together, you can get addresses. Joey Henry is my chief of staff, so if you work with her, we'll get that information on our next meeting. We'll make sure that everyone knows about it. We want solutions.
Yes.
We didn't come to just give complaints.
Right.
You know, we want solutions, and that's a possible solution, but it is like more private.
Yes.
So it'd have to be, you know, we'd have to.
Well, I just want to put you guys on their side. But I was like, I want to speak. She made me come up here. She's like, get up here. And everything that I wanted to say was already said. So the only thing I knew to say was, hey, maybe we can sit down and discuss the solutions.
And that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that we just take care of people, so they can move this from home. They can stay in the homes that they live in. And that, you know, like I said, we didn't want just the complaints, but that's very necessary, so that we know how to move forward. But, thank you, and anybody else want to speak?
You got that, get the light. Right.
What I'm gonna say too is, what I last, go ahead and speak.
I want to hear from everybody that can speak.
Okay, and then we'll all make closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Aisha Gray, and I live on the south side in Savannah, Georgia. And so one thing that I really want to highlight to start off with is when y'all were talking about people over the profit. I think that what this person was speaking to regarding some of the local endeavors where it's putting the profit over the people really needs to be highlighted. There is already empty housing in Savannah, and the houselessness in Savannah is a burden not only on the people experiencing homelessness, but on the community itself. People being homeless makes us all more unsafe. Housed people makes our communities more safe. One thing is when we are considering a rent cap, is that should be capped at 30% of the individual's income after taxes. Because even when, so I'm a single person who is having to move because of a rent increase in a unit that is not upgraded, but the price is being upgraded. And so in applying to other housing areas, I'm finding difficulty that they want 3 times the rent, for my income to be 3 times the rent, but y'all increase the rent. I can't make 3 times the rent if y'all increase on what I already have. It should continue to be 30% of an individual or a household's income, because we are already struggling with increased food prices, gas prices, we're struggling with all other areas. So also as a young person, it is hard for me to even fathom saving up to buy a house. That is not something that I ever foresee myself doing in my lifetime. I will not be able to afford a house because at the end of rent and all of the other bills that are included in student loans as well, there is no way for me to save up for the down payment on a house. If we want to continue with the idea of progress in our communities, people need to be able to save up to buy a house, not just rent. And when people leave our area, leave Savannah, leave Atlanta, leave Georgia because they cannot afford to live here, you leave the people out and all you have remaining is the profit. Do we want to be a state of just profit? Because if that is the case, please go ahead and stop. But it does need to be said. And the biggest thing in terms of these developers is that so many of them are from out of state. The people that own my apartment complex are on the West Coast. If my money was to go to a developer that is here in Georgia, I would be here in Savannah. I would feel so much better about that. But whatever 6 cents that old boy said was going, every unit is going to someone on the West Coast. How is that helping Georgia? So thank you so much. Thank you for y'all's time and y'all listening here. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have any other comments? There's some people who are here that haven't said anything. We're gonna start, down here with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We'll quite close here. So a few things I want to touch on that I did here. You know, corporations are not our friend. We keep talking about profit over people. The state of Georgia, our governor likes to tout as pro-business. We are a pro-business state. However, your business cannot function and thrive if you are not taking care of people. And that's what's happening in the state of Georgia. You have businesses and corporations that are profiting. We can have a whole conversation, I put my union hat on, about wages increasing. Okay? We have corporations fighting people about wages. I saw a statistic where it takes now in Metro Atlanta, you need to make $35 an hour just to pay your rent. $35 an hour. Tell me what job a regular person is working at $35 an hour. That's the first thing. Wages are stagnant. Corporations have some control over that. The second thing is the state of Georgia. I know we talked about localities need to take responsibility, but the state of Georgia is not off the hook here. The state has been very slow to address housing, probably because some are complicit in enabling and profiting. So they've been slow to respond to the housing problem that we're having. You know, a few things that we already talked about, we know we can do. One, you just touched on, we need some more regulations for predatory and corporate landlords coming in. We got to put some regulations on that. There are things we can do to stop the bleeding, which is what we're trying to do. We're at a crisis point. So we're going to have to do some things to stop the bleeding. And that might mean some rent control for a little while. And we could put a sunset on it. So things like we've already talked about that. We need to have more localized control over rent. That's one thing. We could put a sunset on that in the state, just to say, hey, y'all, we got to give our working people a chance to catch up here. That's one thing we need to do. We need to advocate for stronger legislation that prevents financial and other forms of abuse by landlords. There is a reason why these developers like to come to Georgia. We're a hot spot right now. You want to know why? Because Georgia is a landlord favorable state. We have the most lax laws. Rents can be raised, as many properties, people can come in and scoop them up. We have no regulations right now on rent and controlling that price with private companies or what they've developed. I know in Gwinnett County, our county, which is our local government, I don't think they are complicit. I think what is happening is, and what we found is, developers come in so quick after someone has sold their land. They want to build so fast that they put pressure on our commissioners. We need you to approve this zoning. If they don't, they'll sue the county. So the county is in a fight with them, and you got our people that are living around there saying, hey, this is too fast. You know, we might need to look at some impact fees to maybe address that issue. That's something localities can do, and we can do at the state level. So I know in Gwinnett that becomes a problem with them balancing development. Property owners can sell their properties to whomever they like. State of Georgia is more favorable to that, fine. But that also means that when our counties want to push back on zoning, they have a problem because they're getting, and I don't know if that's happening with Savannah. Other things we can do is look at density focused zoning reforms, and that's like allowing like more housing on less land. That's something that we can do at the state level. And the biggest thing, which I want to hit, which I want you guys to leave here with, the state of Georgia, this is why Georgia is not on the hook as a state. The state of Georgia has a $60 billion surplus. This past session, we pushed our Georgia
leaders, and some advocacy groups pushed them to put 100 million of the state's budget into a, housing trust fund. All they were asking for was $100 million, and that's not even enough. That was to put in a housing trust fund so we could make significant investments in affordable housing for people out of the state of Georgia's budget. So as you're looking at making decisions about your leadership at the state level, I want y'all to know we have the money to work with organizations that you're talking about. $60 billion in surplus. We don't even need that. It's just sitting there somewhere, right? We already got the money that we need to make the state of Georgia run. We got plenty of that billion. And all we asked, or all these advocacy groups asked, was for 100 million last year in the budget that was denied by the governor just to invest in housing. So I'm just gonna leave you guys with this. State of Georgia, we could be doing more, it's just not being done. So start pushing legislators down at the state capitol. Start pushing your governor. I would be writing every day.
Oh, yes.
Every day. I don't have anywhere to live. I can't afford my housing. What are you going to do? So, I'm gonna get on my soapbox.
We got to appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming and telling your stories, because sometimes people have to hear it from you to really get the full effect of what's going on and why we're tackling this problem. I represent 17 apartments, so let me correct that. I went from 17 to about 25 apartments. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than to go into an apartment and see that a person's items have been put out on the street. Then you see that child get off the bus and realize that they don't have nowhere to live. I would often get calls in the middle of the night. I don't have nowhere to go, and I'm getting put out. You can't hear these kind of nightmare stories and not have a heart and want to find some way to help people. But sooner or later, you run out of money because the need is so great. A lot of people say they're
And if you don't get off your hand and do it, ain't nobody gonna do it. I tell folks all the time, I buy my own dinner, I need to buy the dinner. Give me some meat. And the only way you get it done is just to hear it over and over from you, who live here, who vote for them. That's how you get it done.
All right. Again, I thank you. Thank you all for being here today. We're gonna close out with chair. You wanna close us out again at the end? Will you close us out in prayer? Because we lost 3/4 of the people before we ended. But there are still people streaming. So we want to make sure that everything is included. And then we were looked over by our Lord and Savior. You know, they say it's a separation between church and state, and that's right. But even in the Senate and the House, we start every morning with prayer. We have a minister of different denominations and different faiths that come each day. And we thank our supreme being, whether you call him God or Jesus or, what is it, the different names, Muhammad, Allah, etc. I'm getting blanks today, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and say, oh, we do have one more person before I get to. Senator, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Only one thing I'm gonna say, I'm gonna reinforce what my colleague said, Nikki Bear said, we can state a lot of money, we can do a lot of stuff with the average folks. But what happened is, you know, we are not, my party is not in power. So not only come to us, please write to governors, lieutenant governors, they have, if they want to do something for the regular folks, they can do it. We give away $127 million to the private school budget. We give a tax bracket to corporations, rich folks, $157 million, just last budget. So we have some money. This is not the only issue that we're dealing with, a lot of social issues we do with is the regular folks helping the folks. So please reach out to both sides of the aisles, not only us, to everybody. And hopefully, and let's pray to have a better future for the next generation. Now, we are pretty old right now, but here I'm saying, speak for myself, you know, for the next generation. I'm worried about my children, my grandchildren, and the young folks that we see that come to intern for us, for the college students, working around the cabinets, you know, what their future. You know, when I grew up, when I graduated from school, college, and I had some money for a house, didn't have to pay that much down payment. Nowadays, you gotta have a lot of money to buy a house. Forget about, you know, you want to move in an apartment, you gotta have a lot of money for the down payment, for 2-3 months deposit. So we talk about a lot of money. So that's what I'm worried about. So thank you for your time and glad to be with you. That's what's going on.
Thank you. And again, how about you, Dory? Do you have anything that we left out? She's the one that gets all the calls. And the emails, and she gives us all of the information, as well as Diego Santana. And you heard from him. And then now also our research person that could not get through, he listened to us today. And he's been out on parent leave, so congratulations on your new baby. And thank you for coming. God bless you. And please come back and see us at the next meeting. But what did you say, Dory? You have anything? Nathan? Okay, did you want to say something or you finished? Because we want our chair, we want to hear from our chair. Okay, wait a minute, he's talking, okay. And he has worked very hard to do research on the entire country and what's going on, and anybody who's having success in their communities with fair rental prices or fair HOA and COA, you know, the condominiums also are having real trouble. Many of them enjoy in the Atlanta area. It's all about water. I think you were talking about that, Senator Lewis. It's about the water problems and the lines being mixed up and everybody having to pay for somebody else's water. So it's some real issues. And then if you don't pay, you dispute it, then you get a lien against you. So it's problems. Go ahead. We have one there. I know he's online, but yes, go ahead, while she's trying to get, yeah.
What is her contact information since she's the gatekeeper?
Okay, hey, Ms. Gatekeeper, can you give us your information? Dory.
Certainly, you can reach me via cell phone 470-418-2036. Again, my name is Dory, D-O-R-E-E, last name Henry, Henry. I am the Chief of Staff for State Senator Donzella James, and my email address is my name, Dory Henry, @gmail.com.
And you want to give anybody else something?
And if you want to get a hold of Senator James, again, her email address is Donzella, DONZELLA, .James @senate.ga.gov. And her phone number is 404-463-1379. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting us, and you close this night.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the members of the Urban Affairs Committee of the Georgia General Assembly. Thank y'all for taking the time to come down to the Port City of Savannah. Thank you, Representative Davis, also, being back in the House. Thank God for hot coffee and cold building. I first want to say that. A couple of things that alluded to. I'm gonna go back to the great constituent that talked about the owning a home. I really implore for you to come out on October 14th here. She said something very, very powerful. You talked about not being able to afford the down payment, and I know everybody's working, robbing people to pay Paul. It's hard, but here's a solution to that. That is bona fide. The state will give you up to $12,000, and the city of Savannah will give you up to $30,000 for down payment assistance. And there are other companies, banks from Wells Fargo to Bank of America and all the different programs. So our focus on that day is to give you all the information needed, and some information people might not be privy of, and how you can qualify. You got lenders, right? We have lenders in here, right? I heard. She might have not heard me on that one, I hope. But we have some solutions, and it's bona fide because 96% of the people that we've gotten qualified in 262 homes have been single parent that have gotten qualified. And so I invite you to come out. The other thing on a personal note, you were talking about the housing authority. We also need to look at improvements because 3 years ago, I lost a 15-year-old grandniece that was shot and killed in the housing complex, still unsolved. Lighting, all the above, attributes to that, and the conditions, the deplorable conditions. So it's not just rent control; it's also accountability of housing. The last thing I want to say, and this is very valuable, is something we need to extend hands. Where I'm a part of the state of Georgia, and Chairman Ellis is a part of the county, and Mayor Van Johnson is the city, and Ms. Karen over there in Pooler, and then in Port Wentworth, and then in Garden City. But we need to get innovative, sit down together, find out what resources we all have. And this is how we remedy the problems. But if we're operating in silos, and the state is just doing this, and we're doing this, and everybody's doing their own thing, we will get nothing done and rectify the problems in the city. That is what I'm about. That's what we're about. We are a band of brothers and sisters in the state of Georgia that can agree to disagree. I'll say we're nothing like Washington, D.C., thank God. So the man, we can agree to that sometimes. And we're not here. But we can agree to disagree. Are y'all with me?
Yes.
So when Senator Lucas was talking to you about holding those elected officials accountable, it's at the table. Because if you come to city council and you voice your opinion, far more with them to give with them at the table. Because they can sit down. Most of the governments have a strong city manager form of government. Their city manager has more power than those individuals. Are you with me? They've got programs, they've got funds, they can get creative, and don't even talk about the poor. I'll tell you this last big story. One of our businesses in my district took me on the tour, and the innovativeness of this, and my chief of staff is with us, there was a train coming through the building, 250,000 square foot. And the innovativeness was, why you got a train? Why do you think he has a train? Because that train can get reached Hyundai quickly, hear me now. So all of that is not, throwing salt on him. But the thing is, you gotta be innovative. You gotta use the different resources that we might not be privy of because we haven't talked. And so that's where we have to go. This housing crisis will not get better in the state of Georgia until we get out of our silos and we get creative. And lastly, to all of the business developers and all the above, it's a better quality of life if everybody benefits. I'm just saying. We got